the challenge of low back pain and muscle pain as well, maybe even in general. And one of the challenges here that can be related to oxalate can be making sure that the muscle has available enough both calcium and magnesium. Now, calcium is what allows the muscle to contract. Magnesium is what allows it to relax. But you can actually have a problem with not enough calcium as well, because then you're not getting the right signal on contraction. So we need to have kind of this clear signal between contraction and relaxation in order for our muscles to be working properly. So lack of electrolytes can actually be part of what can be messing us up with back pain or any kind of muscle pain. But unfortunately, that's not the only place where oxalate can be causing us some difficulty. We can also be getting difficulty because of the kinds of inflammation that's being driven in the muscle itself by the oxalate. And the problem with that can be related to oxalate disrupting the mitochondria so that the muscles aren't having enough energy. And again, you can get kind of a situation where it's turned on and it's stuck turned on, or it's turned off and it's stuck turned off. And neither one of those are good, because if a muscle's too lax, what can happen is the muscles around it contract to try and deal with the laxity of that muscle. So you can have it essentially being triggered as a system, if you will, right? So that it's not just the individual muscle that's having the problem, but the muscles around it, which are also trying to compensate for the muscle that's having the problem. And the other aspect here is not just that oxalate could be affecting a muscle, but that part of the reason that oxalate might be in the muscle is because when we exercise or when we use a muscle, we can have a certain amount of inflammation caused by that. That's in fact kind of normal to our musculature, that our muscles are responding to a stressor. And that's how you can end up with your nice little muscle like I have here, right? Because I've strained it, the muscle fibers are torn and then they rebuild, but they build back in a stronger, bigger form. And when that process is going on, if we have oxalate in our system, oxalate's attracted to locations where we have inflammation. So unfortunately, if you've got an inflamed muscle, you may in fact have oxalate in there as well. So you can really have these multifaceted kinds of issues, which are being driven partially by inflammation caused by oxalate just passing through, so to speak, being perhaps taken up by some of the cells, and then the mitochondria not being happy. You can have oxalate that's come and has stayed for a while, taken up residence someplace and caused some difficulty because it's there and disrupting things, but maybe even physically there as microcrystals at the site of inflammatory processes that were going on. And this business of electrolytes, and it's not just calcium and magnesium that can affect muscles. In order for muscles to have energy, you also need your sodium potassium pump function down at the cellular level working properly. And oxalate as a mineral chelator is going to mess with sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, all of those guys. So yeah, muscle pain can be a bit of a deal. What I would say is, in general, one of the first things that you can try would be Epsom salt, an Epsom salt bath, an Epsom salt soak. But if you don't have a bath, or you're not a real fan of getting into a bath and soaking, or like some people are concerned about the quality of the water that they have in their area, so there can be reasons why you don't want to take a bath. You can also take good quality water, boil it, add Epsom salts to that good quality water, and then use like a face cloth to wipe it on your skin. If it stays on the skin, you'll absorb some of it into the tissues underneath. And so use it over the areas where you have muscles that are sore. That can be a first line approach. And that's almost in some ways like targeted dosing as well, so that some people having an Epsom salt bath will kind of get too much of it. But if you have only certain muscles which are bothering you, then just apply to those muscles that are bothering you. If magnesium in the form of Epsom salts doesn't work on its own, oftentimes it's because you don't have enough potassium as well. So we can come at this in a multifaceted way where maybe you take a potassium supplement to try and keep your potassium levels up a bit better. And that could be potassium citrate for those who tolerate it okay. Citrate doesn't work for everybody, but it always worked fine for me. And the nice thing about that is it's easy to get. But you can also go to a potassium gluconate, which is the form that you would find in plant foods. And you can also go to potassium bicarbonate. And what that does for you is a 2-for-1. You get some bicarbonate, which is a nutrient that oxalate competes with for uptake into your tissues. And so as a net result, bicarbonate can be a helpful thing to add. Your body may need a bit more of it because it's not getting into the tissues as it should if oxalate's being moved in and out. And I buy that from a place in the States. And ironically, the website is nuts.com. Please do not buy nuts there. Those are high oxalate, but you can get food grade potassium bicarbonate at a reasonable price. For those of you who are in Canada like me, I tried to buy potassium bicarbonate at a compounding pharmacy. And for a little tiny container, they charged me about $25. It was a crazy price. So even though it costs, I think, $6 US and there's shipping charges, like it's $6 US for a pound from nuts.com, and then the shipping charges. So what I did was just buy 5 pounds and assume eventually I would use it up. So for those of you who do an Epsom salts bath, you can actually do Epsom salts and some bicarbonate. And if you are finding that your potassium balance is a little off, instead of using baking soda, which I would normally recommend for an Epsom salt bath, you can use some of this potassium bicarbonate. So for those of you who like a recipe, mine's very simple. I don't do a lot of high power stuff in it, and I don't do a ton of ingredients because I get concerned that we won't know what's working. So what I normally recommend is up to 2 cups of Epsom salt. Let's start with a little bit because we don't know what your tolerance level is, but if you can work up to 2 cups, beautiful. And then you can work up to a 1/2 cup of bicarbonate. So if you're using potassium bicarbonate, you might use half as baking soda, which it would be a 1/4 cup of sodium bicarbonate and a 1/4 cup of potassium bicarbonate. So that would be your bath, and you would get some sodium, some potassium, some magnesium, beautiful. And then you get some sulfate from the Epsom salts. So that's good support to the liver and places that need sulfate where oxalate would compete with it. And you're getting some bicarbonate, and it's the same deal. Good support to tissues and organs who would normally use bicarbonate might not be getting enough because oxalate's kind of messing with the system. This is kind of a general recipe that's been recommended on trying low oxalates for like 16 years that I've been there. So it's definitely what I followed. And I find it gentle enough, because the other thing you want to do is not make too much work for your body at the same time as you're trying to support it. So we just want, we want to kind of get the right balance there in terms of support, and not so much nutrient that your body goes, wow, I can do everything, and then starts up too many processes. And then that can be really stressful for your system. So, but muscle pain is one of those things that a lot of people do get. And so topical use of things like Epsom salts, and you can get some small producers on places like Etsy that actually make Epsom salt cream. So just be looking at what the base of that cream is that you tolerate it okay, but that can be a great help. Oh, and another one that I did try myself was a CBD oil in an Epsom salt cream. And I tried that after I broke my wrist in a really klutzy fall. My daughter who was with me saw me fall, and she just went, oh, that didn't go well. Anyway, what I found was that after the cast was off, I would have a lot of aching. I would have a lot of issues with sort of residual inflammation. And it turns out that CBD oil is an inflammasome inhibitor. So if you're providing the nutrients that allow the muscle to relax, and at the same time you're providing something which is going to help to bring the inflammation level down, that can be really helpful. So I really did find this topical CBD oil Epsom salt combination in this cream base was really quite helpful. So that might be another thing for muscle pain. And I like these topical things because then you're not treating the whole body. The whole body isn't being exposed to whatever you're trying to get really specifically to the muscles.
Monique, would it be okay if I mentioned about the myofascial trigger points?
Oh, yes, please do, because you know a lot more about it than me. I bought the
Okay.
book, but I'm just a beginner. Go.
Okay. So anyway, one of the things that I've used for like 15 years, because I had plantar fasciitis so bad I was crippled with it for a year and a half, and tried everything that I could and stumbled upon this information on what are called myofascial trigger points. And basically what it is that, and I've talked with Monique about this before, it's possible that these trigger points are in your muscles usually, and they tend to be in the same place in everybody. Maybe not exactly the same place, but close to it. So just imagine that you have a muscle like this, and it's attached on both ends to bone. And in the middle, you have one of these trigger points. And the trigger point is where your muscle gets all glommed up somehow. Now, I don't know exactly how, but it gets glommed up. So what happens is that muscle tightens up really tight in the middle and puts a lot of pressure on the bones that it's attached to. So that's why a lot of times stretching isn't very effective, because it just will try and stretch a muscle that's not going to relax. So with myofascial trigger point release, there's two kinds of pain. One is the pain that you're feeling. So let's say you have a joint pain. I had one just not too long ago. My thumb started really hurting me, the joints in my thumb. So I already know a lot about these trigger points because I've been doing this for such a long time, and there's a great book for it. So I know that probably anything in my hand is going to be caused by this muscle or one of the muscles in my forearm, because these are the muscles that make your fingers relax and contract. So anyway, like long story short, I spent about a couple days. Oh, so two kinds of pain. One is the pain I felt in my thumb. That's what's called referred pain, because the thing that's causing it isn't in my thumb. It's up here in my forearm. In my forearm, probably in this muscle right here, which is often the culprit for the wrists and the hands, but it could be any muscle in the forearm. I would go to the book, and I'm going to give that book name to you all. And I would look to see where they said for thumb pain, which muscle should I be looking at? And then I would feel around on this muscle until I felt a sore spot. And any place that I felt a sore spot in this muscle would probably be a trigger point, and I'd start massaging it. And I was crippled, like I said, with plantar fasciitis so bad that I'd done everything, podiatrists and injections and you name it. And once I bought this book that laid out this whole methodology, my plantar fasciitis was gone in like 2 or 3 days. So anyway, one other thing that I have is this little gadget. It's called a knobble, and you take this and you rub it on your trigger points so that you don't strain your hands too much, because it's pretty hard on your hands for you to massage your own self, especially if you're going to get into your thigh muscles or your calf muscles and etc. So anyway, it's probably based originally on acupuncture, acupressure. The woman who designed this used to be JFK's doctor. I don't know if any of you are old enough to have remembered him. He used to have to be carried in and out of the airplane because his back was so bad on a gurney. Anyway, Janet Travell, who came up with all of this over 40 years of working, was his physician. So anyway, I try to be an advocate for it. So the only tools you really need this is really handy, costs about $8. The other thing I recommend that you get if you buy the book's about $20 on Amazon, is that you also get a lacrosse ball. And I don't have one right here, but it's the size of a tennis ball, but it's firmer, and that's what you use on your back. So you put it up against the wall between your back and the wall, and then you roll around and you do this up against the wall wherever you have a sore spot. So basically in your body, probably you shouldn't really have any sore spots. So, as I'm sitting watching television, I am patrolling my body, seeing the places where I know I often have problems to see whether I have a trigger point and put a little massage on it. So anyway, do you want me to put it in the chat box or
Yeah,
tell
the
you?
chat would be great. The chat
Okay,
would.
I'll put it there.
Yeah.
And then one other thing I just wanted to throw out, I was having extremely bad Charlie horses in my calves and in my feet in the mornings, early morning for months. And Monique had recommended I try a potassium bicarb spray on my legs, and it didn't really work. But then I started doing a foot bath and leaving it on for about half an hour and rubbing it up my calves and that, and they're gone now. Those cramps are gone.
Yeah, if you can do
Anyway,
soaks or of some kind, it's better. But yeah, it just gives
yeah.
more time for your body to absorb it.
But I wanted to get that in there. It'll help people so much, I think. It's just helped me so much. But
It's a physical approach. And I'm a big advocate of come at a problem as many ways as you need to in order to solve it. So physically, biochemically, there can be all kinds of ways that we can get at supplements, blah, blah, blah.